Welcome to the TAOFit method. In previous sessions, we talked about rib flare. When the 12 thoracic vertebrae are unable to extend individually, instead the movement is forced into the T12-L1 junction, creating massive hyperextension, lifting the rib cage and placing greater stress on the low back. Today, I want to connect rib flare to shoulder stability. If the ribs are flared and the thorax is stuck, scapula cannot downwardly rotate and instead stay upwardly rotated, which means cannot lock into your core. Rib flare leaves the shoulders less stable and more at risk of strain or injury. We're going to begin today's class with two assessments, standing crocodile breath and the staff shoulder mobility assessment. These are not pass or fail tests. They are here to help you develop a deeper sense of how you breathe and move. At the end of the session, we will return to these assessments to observe how your breath and shoulders feel compared to the start. Our goal today is not to force big changes, but to build awareness of how the ribs and pelvis move together, as well as how the connection supports shoulder function. So, let's get started. So we're going to start with our standing crocodile breath. I want to use the hands as an assessment tool to feel symmetry throughout the abdominal core. I want to feel how does breath move into the belly, out to the sides, and into the low back. So we're using our thumbs pressed into that low back musculature, index fingers wrapped around to feel a little bit of that abdominal musculature. Palms are pressing into the side. Now I want you to imagine if you're holding a partially inflated balloon and somebody inflates it, you're going to feel how that pressure pushes out and away, and it's going to do so in that full 360 degrees of that balloon. So on our inhale breath, I want to feel that expansion out and away. As we exhale out through our mouth, we're drawing our navel up and in, and we're letting those hands cinch down just a little bit in order to feel that expansion out and away. And we'll get a good 5 to 10 breaths. And as you're getting into it, start to notice how does that breath move forward into the low back, out through the sides. And really, more importantly, is it different on the left side compared to the right side? Very, very common is it's very difficult to feel that expansion into the low back area, or you might feel it move a little bit more on one side and not on the other side. And that's going to be a big deal. That is one of the primary things we're assessing for. This is also works as a little bit of a core activation to get us started for our session. And try to keep this, what you're sensing and feeling in your mind, so that by the time we come back to the end of the class, we can when we reassess this, we can compare how does it feel at the end compared to what you're feeling right now. We're going to go ahead and grab our staff. And I want to continue with that breath, breathing into that crocodile breath. We're going to start with the staff in front, nice soft grip. And we're going to get into some pelvic tilts. Inhale, we're allowing that pelvis to start to tilt forward. This is going to let that breath move more fully into the belly and less into the low back. We're actually going to get a sway in the low back. As we exhale, I want to scoop. Feel that tailbone scoop underneath. And moving back and forth. I want to make sure we're not pushing into pain or pinch in the low back. So if you feel some tightness, I want to move into that softly, safely, non-forcefully. And as we're getting into this tilt with our breath, I want to start to connect it to our pelvis, to our rib cage. Notice how as the pelvis tilts forward, your rib should lift up and away. As you exhale and scoop, the rib cage is dropping down towards the pelvis. And I want to get a good feel for that action And also notice as you exhale, that rib cage drops. We should also get a little bit more core activation. Our abdominal cores are going to get tense on the exhale. Inhale, everything's getting nice and long. Now we're going to start to add our staff. As we exhale and scoop, I want to feel that rib depress, dropping down. And from here, we're going to very slowly bring our arms up overhead. And I only want to bring my arms up as high as I can maintain that depressed rib. If you get to a point where it gets stuck or stiff, that's probably your end range. If we push past that anymore, instead of that movement happening at the shoulders, this is where we're going to get that hyperextension at that T12L1 junction. So I want to maintain that depressed rib and see if we can get that movement more at the shoulders themselves. We're going to inhale, let the shoulders come forward softly. Exhale, squeeze into that end range where it's feeling a little bit tight. We're going to do 10 nice slow reps. Inhale forward, exhale as we pull those elbows back lightly. Again, I want to make sure that we're scooping as we pull so that we feel that rib drop as opposed to lift. Again, this is an assessment, so I want to get that feel. Notice how much range of motion that you have in the shoulders. Are you able to get those shoulders back to the ears, or are they a little bit in front of the ears? Next, we're going to move the staff to behind the back. Palms are facing backwards. We're going to do that same action of pelvic tilts with that rib cage. So nice inhale, let the pelvis tilt forward. Exhale, scoop, and get that feeling that rib drop. As that pelvis scoops, we're now lifting the elbows softly up to the ceiling. But again, I want to only go as high as I can without getting that rib to extend out and away. As we exhale, squeeze into it. Inhale, we're going to let it soften and drop. Exhale, feel that scoop. Nice slow lift. Again, we're doing 10 nice slow reps. And I want to notice, how does this feel right shoulder compared to left shoulder? Are we able to maintain that core so we keep that rib from dropping? And then how high are we able to lift? Once we get through 10, we're going to flip the palms to the opposite direction. So palms are now facing forward, and we're going to do the exact same thing. Nice inhale, pelvis tilts. Exhale, scoop as we lift. Trying to maintain that depressed rib. Core is active. And again, notice the difference. Right shoulder to left shoulder. Are you able to keep that rib moving down to the pelvis? And then how much range of motion do you have in the shoulders? We'll go ahead and set our staff down to the side. We're going to come back to that at the end of class, and we're going to go back through those assessments. We're now going to get down onto the floor, and we're going to get into our shin box. We're only going to do a couple of shin box moves today. I am in my left side shin box. Left hand is down, grounded through the palm. Weight is shifted over so that my back hip is free from the ground. I don't want to try to keep this hip down. I want it floating so that we can play with that back hip. And we're gonna get back in to notice that pelvic tilt to rib. We're gonna start with our hand on our rib. So I'm in my left side shin box. I'm bringing my right hand onto my right side lower rib. We're gonna breathe into that back hip, allowing it to drop to the floor. As we do so, kind of notice, where does that rib feel like? Can you feel where that rib is moving in relationship to the hip? And then as we exhale, we're lifting that hip up, moving it forward, and actively scooping. Inhale, that hip reaches to the floor. Exhale, lifts up, moves forward, and I want to really scoop into it. Now, coming back to feel what's happening at that rib. As the hip is dropping, the rib should feel like it is lifting away from that hip. The rib's not moving a whole lot, but it's moving in relationship. As we exhale and scoop, you should feel that rib it should feel like it's moving towards the hip. So see if you can feel that action. On the inhale, can you feel that rib lift? On the exhale, can you feel it move towards the hip? That's also going to create that tension between the rib and the hip. So you're going to get a little bit of that core activation. I want to really get this sense and feel of this rib and how the rib and the pelvis, how they move in relationship to one another. Getting that sense and feel is really, really important as far as like developing better motor quality. Once we get 10 reps on that side, we're switching to the other side and we're going to do the same thing. So again, shifted weight, palm is fully grounded, shoulders packed. We've got a nice tall spine, and that back hip is free from the ground. Placing the left hand on the left rib. Inhale as we let that hip reach to the floor. Exhale as we lift, reach forward, and actively scoop. And as you do a couple of these, start to notice that action of the rib related to the pelvis. Can you feel it lift away from the pelvis on the inhale? Can you feel it moving towards the pelvis on the exhale? Do you have greater tightness and tension in the front of this hip compared to the other side? Common issues here is if you have a lot of tightness through the front of this thigh, it's hard to get that full scoop, which means you're not going to get the same amount of rib drop. If the pelvis is not able to move, the rib is not going to be able to go through its full range of motion as well, which is part of the reason these assessments are so valuable and important, because we're looking to see, can we functionally do the same thing on both sides of the body? My left hip is significantly tighter than my right. This action is not as strong on this side. I have to really work to get it activated on a day-to-day basis. Once we get to our 10, we're switching back to the other side. We can keep that hand on the rib. Now we're going to do some knee openers. So as I inhale, again, letting that hip kind of drop, let that rib lift. On the exhale, we're lifting that back knee up slowly towards the ceiling. I still want to feel this lifting of the rib on the inhale. Exhale, it should feel like it's lightly dropping towards that back pelvis. As I lift that back knee, I'm slowly squeezing into it. I'm seeing how much range I have. And I want to see, do we feel the stretch more through the inner thigh? Do you feel it more through the outer front thigh? Or do you feel it more in the glute in the back? And then also, how high does that knee travel? How much range of motion do you have on this side? Once we get to our 10 reps, we're going to slowly switch to the other side, doing the same thing. Grounded through that palm, spiral to elbow, hand is on that lower rib. Inhale into that back hip. Exhale as we slowly lift that knee up to the ceiling. I do not have the same range of motion on this knee. I have a lot more tightness in the groin area here. but I can feel that rib moving. And each one that I'm doing, I'm getting a little bit more mobility in the hip. So my hip mobility is improving just from doing a few reps. Still limited compared to the right side, but this is the purpose of these assessments, is to notice the differences so that we can work on improving them. Once we get to our 10th rep, we're going to switch back to the other side, and now we're going to get into our folds. Today with folds, I want to focus on the shin as where we're staying square to. So I want shoulders square to the shin, hands square to the shoulders. Nice inhale into that back hip bowl. Exhale as that hip lifts, moves forward and scoops. I want to keep that back hip kind of locked into that scoop as we fold. And I want to fold squarely and evenly through the shin. Both hands should go the same distance. I don't want one hand moving further forward than the other. Inhale brings it all the way back up into that back hip bowl. Exhale, lift, scoop, actively lock in that hip as you fold. By getting this back hip to scoop before we fold, we should be able to get a little bit of a stretch into this front of the back hip. And then as we fold, we should be able to feel some stretch through the back of the front hip. And I want to really get a sense for how those feel so that when we go to the other side, we can compare. Again, nice, slow 10 reps. And then we're going to switch to the other side. Again, by staying square to the shin, you may find that one side of the body that's a lot harder to stay square to the shin. That's part of the reason I like using being square to either the knee or the shin, because it gives us some awareness of some imbalances in our posture on one side. My right side shin box, my body wants to lean. It's a lot harder to work to be square. I have to fight a little bit, and there's some effort in order to get this. And I feel it largely in this left hip and in my right side low back. So by getting into these positions, we start to develop awareness of where those tension patterns are actually coming from. So again, trying to stay as square as we can to that shin. Nice inhale into that back hip bowl. Exhale as it lifts, reaches forward and actively scoops. Continue to exhale as we fold. Notice if this side feels easier or more challenging. Is it tighter? And if it is tighter on this side, where do you feel that tension? Do you feel it more in the front of this back hip? Do you feel it more in the back of the front hip? Or do you feel it more in your low back or even up into the shoulders? Again, getting a nice slow 10 reps. And once we're done, we're going to move and shift into our half kneeling position. So in half kneeling, if your knees are sensitive, you can either get a pad, fold up a blanket, have something for a little bit of extra padding, or another option is getting a chair, like a dining room chair, and doing it from a seated position, split stance seated position on a chair. You can do all the same things we're doing in our half kneeling, except for the lunge part. You can do all of that in a chair. So half kneeling position, I want knee to be directly under the hip, directly under the shoulder, directly under the head. I don't want to lean forward or lean back. I want to try to have a nice stack over that knee. And we're going to come back and we're going to focus on that pelvic tilt. But now, since we're in a split stance, we're only going to be able to work one pelvis at a time. And I want to go ahead and place a hand on that lower rib. So I'm on my right knee. So I'm working my right pelvis. So I'm placing my right hand on that bottom rib. I also want the toes to be tucked in the back, because the toes tucked, there's a relationship between that big toe and the hip flexors. I want to keep that big toe kind of a little bit engaged here. So we're going to inhale, allow that pelvis to tilt forward, creating sway in the back, belly's opening up. Exhale, we're drawing navel into spine as we scoop. I want to feel that as a light stretch moving down the thigh. And we got our hand on that rib again so that we can start to build some awareness between how these two structures will move together. As that pelvis tilts forward, you should feel that rib moving up. And then as we scoop the pelvis, you should feel that rib depressing down, moving towards that pelvis. And as you're feeling it with your hand, also notice how the musculature around it supports those movements. As you exhale and scoop, that core should be getting a little bit tense. Once we get our 10 reps, we're going to switch and do the same thing on the other side. So finding that same position, toes tucked, head, shoulders, hips stacked over the knee, hand is on that lower rib. Inhale, feel that belly open up as the pelvis turns down towards the floor, creating some sway in the low back. Exhale, scooping that tailbone as you draw the navel up and in. And you want to feel that as a light stretch down the front of the thigh. And as you're getting into it, start to notice that rib relationship to the pelvis. As we're inhaling, pelvis tilts down, rib is lifting. Exhale, scoop, rib is depressing. Can you feel that core activation? You might even notice differences in the big toes. If one hip is tighter, more than likely that big toe in the back also feels tighter on one side. I'm feeling that. I got a lot bigger stretch through the front of this thigh. I feel a little bit more stiffness in the big toe on the left foot than I did on the right foot. Although as I'm getting into this, with just a few reps, I'm feeling the hip opening up a little bit. I'm getting a little bit more mobility. I feel like I got better activation and action going on with my rib related to that pelvis. Once we get 10 of those, we're going to switch back to the other side. Again, making sure that toe is tucked, everything's stacked over the knee. Now we're going to add a lunge. So if you're in a chair, I would just continue with the previous movements. So now as we exhale and scoop, I want to lock in that scoop and I want to resist losing the scoop. But from here, we're going to lightly lunge forward. This lunge is going to pull me out of that scoop. So I'm simply resisting it till I get kind of in this nice extended position. I'm coming right back up on my inhale, into that exhale, lock in that scoop, and then try to resist losing it as you lunge forward. Inhale as we come back. Now, as we lunge, I don't want to lean forward with my head and shoulders. I want to keep my head and shoulders and hips still stacked, even though I'm moving away from the knee itself. The knee is going to stay behind, but I don't want to either lean forward or let my hips lean with my head staying back. See if you can keep these elements stacked together as we move forward. Inhale as we come back. And once we get our 10 reps, we'll switch to the other side. Again, tucking that back toe. Nice inhale. Feel that pelvis tilt to the floor. Exhale, scoop, lock it in. and then continue to exhale as we shift forward, trying to resist losing that scooped pelvis. And as you're doing this one should give you some pretty strong tells on if one hip is tighter and more restricted, especially as we start to lunge forward. I'm still keeping my hand on my rib. I still want to feel that rib moving towards that pelvis, even as we're lunging forward. I don't want to feel that rib extending out. Again, that can be a tell for if the shoulders are starting to rock backwards, that rib, because that will cause that rib to flare. All right, we're going to switch back to our starting side. Still in this half kneeling. We're still doing all the same pelvic tilt. This time I want to place my opposite hand across onto that right rib. So as we inhale, pelvis tilts, rib is flaring. Exhale, scoop, rib should drop. Since I'm on my right knee, I'm taking my right hand and I'm now reaching straight up to the ceiling, trying to get as long as I can from my knee to my fingertips. Inhale, I'm dropping my, relaxing the shoulder as I let that pelvis tilt forward, big sway in the back. Exhale, scoop. I want to lock in that hip. Continue to exhale as we reach. Now with that rib, I got my hand on that rib. We should already have a good connection of inhale, that rib lifts. Exhale, the rib drops. But as I reach my arm overhead, I don't want that rib to start lifting up with my arm. I want to still feel downward motion. I want to feel it working towards my hip, even as my arm extends. So how much I reach up to the ceiling is going to be dependent on how much I can keep that rib from wanting to stick out and get that extension in my low back. I can extend that low back and I can reach higher, but I'm getting all that extra reach from that junction. So I'm less concerned about how high and more with, can I keep core? Can I find that reach? Can I keep reaching and extending, but feel that rib continuing to depress down? And if you're able to kind of find those cues and lock them in together, that should deepen the stretch through the front of the hip and even draw it up into the abdominal viscera. We'll go ahead and switch, and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So again, opposite hand is across on that rib. Nice inhale, pelvis tilts forward. Exhale, scoop. Feel that rib drop as you reach. By adding in the reach through the shoulders and trying to maintain that drop, this should help to bring some more connection to how those shoulders are also playing a role in this relationship between the ribs and the pelvis. The shoulders are massively rounded forward. It's going to be really hard to extend those arms up without extending at that mid-back area. So developing this control will allow us to start moving that extension further up into the higher level of the thoracic spine, which will allow the scapula to downwardly rotate, which will free all this extra space that we can now get that arm and shoulder into. If you're finding this is limited, it has a lot more to do with what's going on here than it does at the shoulder. And super valuable is just noticing the differences between this side and the other side. This side for me is a lot harder to maintain that rib down. My shoulder's tighter and the hip is tighter. I have a little bit less mobility on this side than I do on the other side. All right, last one. We're going to actually go ahead and grab the staff. We're going to bring the staff across the front of the shoulders. We're going to cross the hands to hold the staff in place. Then I want to lift the elbows up so that staff is sitting on a shelf for the shoulders. And this is just simply to keep our shoulders square. We're going to do the same breath into that pelvic tilt. Exhale, scoop, locking in that rib. But now we're going to turn our shoulders towards the leg that is in front. Well, I want to keep them square, so I want to keep that staff touching the tips of both shoulders, the front of both shoulders, as we turn and rotate. Inhale as you bring it back. One other thing here is I want you to find a point straight in front of you, whether you're looking at the computer or a point on the wall, and I want you to keep your eyes focused on that point as you rotate. Don't let your head turn with your shoulders. Keep that point on the wall. Squeeze the shoulders as far as you can without losing that pelvis to rib cage. Inhale, pelvis can tilt forward, belly can open up, rib can lift. Exhale, scoop. Feel that rib depress. And you're trying to maintain that as you rotate. And as you're squeezing into it, you might notice some interesting core activation, especially through those obliques. Those muscles that cross through on the side. And if you're feeling anything tight, restricted, interesting on this side, we're going to switch sides so that we can compare. So again, nice breath in, feel that belly extend, rib lifts. Exhale, scoop, feel the rib depress. And then we're slowly turning those shoulders towards the leg that is elevated in front. Inhale as you bring it back. And again, keeping those eyes fixed on a point on the horizon in front of you. And as you're getting into this, notice, how does this side feel different from the other side? I got tightness in this hip, but my range of motion of my rotation is actually more. When I was going the other direction, I got a lot more activation in my oblique core than I'm getting on this side. This side feels relatively easy to get into compared to the other side. All right, good. So now we're gonna come up to a standing position. If you find that you have balance issues, I want you to go ahead and have the staff in order to use it for balance and support, or you can use a chair, couch, or a counter in order to have something just to maintain some stability. And we're going to go through some gait mobility now. I'm going to set the staff to the side. Well, I'm going to keep it in my hand for the moment. So we're going to start with some foot mobility. We're going to get our feet nice and wide. I want both feet pointed perfectly forward. We're going to bring one foot slightly in front. So we're going to take one step forward. Then I want to shift our weight onto that leg so that we're feeling about 70% of our body weight on that front leg, 30% in that back leg. From here, that leg lightly forward. I want to spread the toes of that front foot, lightly lift the heel off the floor. And I want all of that 70% of our load that's moving into the front foot to be all the way down to the ball of the foot. And I want to imagine that somebody's got a nail gun and they put a nail right through the base of the big toe and right through the base of the pinky toe. And so those parts of our foot are nailed down to the floor. They cannot move, they cannot lift. So I got that weight shifted, my heel is slightly lifted, knee is going to rotate out to in. But since those two points are nailed to the floor, that foot cannot roll up. That big toe cannot float, the pinky toe cannot float. They have to stay stuck to the ground. Now the heel is lifted, so as that knee turns out, if you look at your heel, that heel should turn in, and as your knee turns in, that heel should turn out. And if you got those two nails through the front of the foot, and the heel is moving side to side, that means at the midfoot, you are wringing that midfoot out like a washcloth. Those joints through that midfoot are synovial joints. They have lubrication. They're supposed to move. They're supposed to slide and glide. And when we put them into shoes with arch supports, they lose their ability to move, to be mobile. And those joints tend to get stiff and stuck and immobile. And then that creates other issues, knees, hips, spine, shoulders, neck, everywhere. Once we get about 10 reps, we're going to go ahead and switch to the other side. So again, feet are wide, both feet are forward, slight step in front, shifting our weight, spreading the toes of that front foot, lightly lifting that heel, nail gun, bam, bam, big toe, pinky toe, keeping those toes locked into the floor, moving that knee in and out. I want to make sure we're not moving into discomfort in the knee, but I want to see how much range can we get between the knee and the heel moving while maintaining that locked position for the forefoot. And how does this feel on this side compared to the previous side? Is one side, do you feel tighter, more restricted? Is it harder to keep the feet locked down? If you can't keep those 2 points locked down, then that's going to be a pretty strong indication of some immobility in the foot. So getting the foot to move better is going to be, I think it's going to be pretty valuable. And once we get to 10 reps, we're going to switch. We're coming back to our previous leg being forward. But instead of a wide stance, I want to be more in our natural gait stance. So I'm bringing my feet back to about hip to shoulder width. I'm going to take one decent sized step forward. I still have the staff here because I want a little extra support and balance so that I can really focus on connecting through the feet. I don't want to overload the balance and miss out on the mobility that we get to work on. So I got one foot slightly forward, the other foot is back. I want to shift weight again so that we have most of our weight is on our front foot. And notice my back heel is now off the ground. We're going to start with pelvic tilts. I'm going to turn around so I'm got my other hip to us. We're going to get into pelvic tilts, and we're basically going to do the same movements that we did in our half kneeling, but we're going to connect it more into our feet. So on that inhale, I want to feel that belly open up, rib lifts up. That back pelvis should turn down towards the floor. On the exhale, we're drawing our navel up and in. Feel that rib drop down. We can even place our hand on that rib to feel it. And we're going back and forth. Feel that nice breath in, pelvis tilts forward. Exhale, feel that scoop. It's not going to be a huge movement, but I want to feel as much of it as we can. Can you feel that rib lift on the inhale? Can you feel it depress as you scoop into it on the exhale? Can you feel some stretch through the front of this back thigh? The more our weight is shifted forward, should accentuate that stretch through the hip, especially as we scoop. As you're starting to feel that rib and pelvis connection. Now we're going to start to play with the knee. I want to let that knee soften, bend. We're going to plant through that back foot, driving the heel up to the ceiling. And then we're going to reach that heel to the floor as we actively straighten the knee. We don't have to touch the floor, but we're trying to root down like we're pushing that hip heel down as close as we can get to the floor. Inhale, letting that knee soften and bend as we plant through the ball of the foot, lifting the heel. Exhale, actively straighten that knee like you're trying to touch the wall behind, and then actively reach through the heel like you're trying to grow a root into the floor. And as we're getting into that, I now want to connect it back to our pelvis. So as you're letting that knee bend, we're inhaling, pelvis tilts forward, rib is flaring, get a sway in the back. Exhale, scoop your tailbone as you're actively straightening that knee and reaching the heel. If you're able to feel that rib depress with that scoop, and you're able to get that knee to extend, that's going to place a greater stretch through the front of the thigh. Once we get about 5 to 10 reps, we're going to go and switch sides, and we're going to do all the same stuff. So again, feet are about hip to shoulder width apart, taking one decent step forward so that we're on with 70% of our weight on that front leg, 30% reaching back into that back leg. And we're going to start with that pelvis again. Hand can be placed on the rib. Nice inhale, let that pelvis tilt forward, rib is lifting. Exhale, scoop as you feel, see if you can feel that rib depressing. Inhale, feel it lift. Exhale, can you scoop into it? Can you feel that stretch through the front of the thigh? If you're struggling feeling that stretch on the front of the thigh, you might need to let your weight shift forward a little bit more. It's part of the reason we have the staff, so that we have some support. Once we get 5 to 10 reps, we're now going to focus at the knee and the foot. So on that inhale, letting the knee soften as I drive through the ball of the foot, lifting the heel up to the ceiling. Inhale, as I reach that hip or heel, actively straightening the knee. I want to feel a nice little mobility work through the ball of the big toe as we drive that heel up. As you actively straighten that knee, reaching it back and then rooting through that heel, I want to see if we can feel that stretch open up through the front of the hip. And again, if you're not feeling that, it might be because you're starting to shift your weight back into it. Keep that weight more forward. So we're reaching into that load through that heel. That heel has to draw everything back, which opens up that front of the hip. And now let's connect it back to the pelvis. Inhale, feel that rib lift as the knee bends and softens as we plant through the ball of the foot. Exhale, scoop, feel that rib drop at the same time that we are actively straightening the knee, reaching the heel down. The more you're able to feel that rib depress with that scoop, that knee actively straight and root through the heel, we should really be able to open up that space on the front of the hip. And then once we get 5 to 10 reps, and come out of that, And we're going to grab our staff and we're going to go back through our shoulder assessment. So getting a nice shoulder width grip on the staff. We'll stick with just 5 reps of everything as a finishing. We'll start with our breath, getting back into pelvic tilts. Let that pelvis tilt forward. Feel that rib flare. Exhale, scoop. Feel that rib depress. Notice if you have more mobility in the low back. If your back was stiff and tight, do you have a little bit more range of motion? Do you have a little bit more access? On our 5th one, as we exhale, we're now bringing those arms up, seeing how far can we get those shoulders to move without that rib lifting. So nice exhale as we scoop. Inhale, let the shoulders soften. You can let that belly open up, big sway in the back, rib lifts. Exhale, lock it in and squeeze into it. And then notice, how is the range of motion at the shoulder? Are you able to feel that locked in rib to pelvis? And are you able to get a little bit more mobility in the shoulders with this? Being able to manage that rib flare will allow us to get better shoulder mobility work. That rib is constantly flaring. This might look and almost feel like I'm getting a lot of shoulder work, but really I am simply mobilizing at that T12L1. That rib is drawn down, core is in. I am now isolating all that mobility at the shoulder joint so I can get a better read for how the quality of my shoulder mobility. We're going to move the staff to behind the body. Same pelvic tilts. And then exhale, feel that scoop, rib drop. Then we're at lifting shoulders up to the ceiling. Inhale, you can let that pelvis tilt, rib gets to flare. Exhale, feel it drop on the scoop as you lift. And again, how does this feel compared to the beginning of the session? I have a significant amount of improvement in my mobility in the shoulders. My shoulders felt stiff at the beginning. They feel a little bit smoother now. We'll go ahead and flip the palms so that the palm is facing forward. Exact same movement. Inhale, feel the ribs flare. Exhale, scoop, feel them drop as we lift. And once we get 5 of those, we'll set the staff down to the side. We're going to come back to our crocodile breath, finish with that nice little assessment. Thumbs in the back, index fingers in the front, hands below the ribs and above the hip bones. And feeling that nice symmetry of how well does that abdominal wall expand on the inhale. Exhale, let those hands cinch down a little bit to create that resistance for the next inhale. And notice, how does this feel compared to the beginning of the class? Do you feel better symmetry? Did that space that wasn't moving as well, can you get a little bit better movement, or is it a little bit closer to feeling some movement? Do you have a little bit more sense and awareness for these spaces in the body? And if so, that's great. The trick is going to be working on these things daily in order to really develop that neuro awareness of all of these movements in order to improve our movement capabilities. When you're ready, let those arms shake out, kind of soften it up, get a few more nice breaths in and out. And I'd love to hear how you thought this class was, what you discovered, what you found relevant. Please post it in the comments.